Fourth species counterpoint introduces rhythmic displacement. The counterpoint contains one note per cantus firmus note, but the counterpoint is displaced by half a measure. This results in tied notes across the bar line. In fourth species counterpoint, the second note of the measure, on the weak beat, is always consonant. The first note of the measure, however, which is tied over from the previous measure, can sometimes be dissonant. Dissonant intervals of this type are called suspensions. A suspension has three parts: the preparation, which is the consonant note before the bar line; the suspension itself, which occurs when the preparation note is tied over to the next bar; and the resolution, which occurs when the suspension proceeds down by step. Here is the most important thing to remember about suspensions. Suspensions always resolve down by step. When the strong beat of a measure is a dissonant suspension, the next note of the counterpoint must be a step lower. Let's practice writing a few suspensions. Complete these two-measure counterpoint fragments by tying the first note over the bar line, creating a suspension, and then resolving it down. So in the first one here, you'd tie the D over and write another D, which creates a dissonant fourth over the cantus's A. Don't forget to circle the interval number if it's dissonant. Next, we'll resolve this D down by step to a consonant C, making a tenth. Now pause the video, copy down the rest of these exercises, and complete the counterpoint so that each has a suspension and resolution. Bring your answers to class. There are three types of suspensions that can occur in the upper voice. We name these based on the intervals formed by the suspension and resolution. So we can have a 7-6 suspension, a 4-3 suspension, which is sometimes written 4-10, or a 9-8 suspension. A good fourth species counterpoint will have several dissonant suspensions along with some measures that contain only consonances. Sometimes a tied note will lead to a consonance on the downbeat, after which you do not need to resolve down by step. It is also acceptable to break the species once or twice in your counterpoint by not tying a note across the bar line. In this case, you're essentially writing second species counterpoint for a short period before going back to writing tied notes characteristic of fourth species. A particularly nice thing to do with fourth species counterpoint is to create suspension chains, which are series of measures containing the same suspension a few times in a row. This is possible only when the cantus firmus descends by step. You can write chains of 7-6 suspensions, and you can write chains of 4-3 suspensions. But you cannot write chains of 9-8 suspensions because that's basically parallel octaves. In general, you should limit your suspension chains to 3 measures to avoid monotony. Finally, let's look at beginning and ending your counterpoint. Fourth species exercises generally begin with a half measure of rest, followed by a third, fifth, or octave above the cantus, just as in other species. The ending, just as in other species, is in contrary motion to an octave with a whole note in the last bar. In fourth species, this means that the second to last measure will have a 7/6 suspension. In preparation for class, pause the video and fill in these very short counterpoints in fourth species. Make sure to include the correct beginning and ending patterns. Bring your answers to class.